Hi, welcome back to the channel. And tonight I've got one of my favourite guests. It's Lauren, farmer's wife, farming life. Welcome, Lauren. Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I always open up with the same question. So can you give us your why?
Yes, so my why is because going back to 2021, I was very poorly. Up until this point, I thought that I was well, but now I look back on it and I wasn't. Suffered from constant ear infections, UTIs, and I had lots of antibiotics throughout my life. Um, but the end of 2021, I developed a like a lump feeling in my throat. I describe it as like an obstruction kind of feeling, and I really struggled to get food down. So back then, I was very dependent on the doctors. I think growing up, any problem that I would just be straight in the doctor, and I trusted everything they said, and would just rely on medication really. So anything that I had, I'd go to the doctor and they'd give me medication, and I would feel happy that I'd received the medication and thinking that's great because it's going to heal me. So I went to the doctor like with the same intention that I'd already always had. And they said to me that they didn't quite know what it was, but they thought it could be acid reflux, or they thought it could be strep throat. Because they didn't know which one it was, they gave me medication for both of those. So I got antibiotics for the strep throat, and I got a metrazole, which is an acid blocker or a PPI for the acid reflux. So I came away quite happy, thinking I'm going to take those, everything's going to be good, and I'm going to be well again. So I think it got to about a week probably that I've been taking both lots of tablets, and nothing had helped it, and it was actually worse now than what it was when I went to the doctor in the beginning. So I was thinking it's definitely not strep throat, because I think if it was, the antibiotics would have got rid of that. So I'm thinking maybe it is the acid reflux side of things. And so I rang the doctor, because at this point I'm not eating anything because I'm struggling to swallow, and it's just sore. I'm just not, I just wasn't well. And when you're not yourself, you like tend to lose your appetite in that anyway. So I hadn't hardly eaten anything for the whole week. Rang the doctor and explained the situation, and he said, I think you now ought to double the dose of your omeprazole. So again, actually, like I actually had like a lot of faith in the doctor, so I'm thinking, yeah, that's good. Maybe I'm just somebody who needs like a little bit more medication. So I did what he said and doubled my dose. Did that again for, I don't know, a week or two, and just nothing was getting better. In fact, I was just getting worse the whole time. So this feeling just kept developing. It just felt like more and more of an obstruction. Still really struggling to swallow. Just sore, and I also had like a lot of mucus build up in my throat. So obviously after this bit of time, I realised that something's not right. So I had to go back to the doctor again. At this point, it was actually post-COVID, but they didn't actually want to see me, so it was all over the phone kind of thing. I just had to pick up the phone, and they would they'd ask me a few things over the phone, and they'd go from that. But this time they were like, yeah, something must be going on. I think we'll put you in for an endoscopy, you know, the camera down the throat into the stomach. So it wasn't, I don't think I had to wait too long, but I got booked in for one of those, went in for that. I had sedation, so you get given the option whether you have sedation or not, and I did decide to go for it because I spoke to a few people that have had it and said that it can be uncomfortable. So I just thought, to make the process as comfortable as possible, I'd have the sedation. So I had that done, and came out and got discharged. Because I had the sedation, my husband had to come and pick me up in the car because I wasn't allowed to drive for 24 hours afterwards. He came to pick me up and I got in the car. Bear in mind, I was still a little bit dazed from the sedation. I was like, I remember it. I was still like aware, but I was just a little bit dazed. So the only way I can describe it. So I got in the car and he said, "Oh, how did you get on?" And I thought, "Oh, I don't know actually. Like, I can't. Nobody said anything to me. I can't remember. The last thing I can remember in the hospital was being led in the bed and them saying, 'Would I like some toast?' Which I refused because obviously at that point I hadn't really been eating and I knew that I'm probably not going to get the toast down anyway. So yeah, I got in the car and I said, I don't really know, but I did get handed this piece of paper. So I had a folded up piece of paper. So I unfolded it, and there on the paper it said that I had grade A esophagitis, and I'd had a couple lesions in my esophagus as well, which they had to take biopsies from. So this is all just written on a piece of paper. So obviously I see the lesions part and that they've had to take biopsies, and as you naturally would, your first thought goes to, oh my goodness, it must be cancer, because why would they want to take biopsies? Like, I'm thinking that must be what they're thinking, to take biopsies. So that was a little startling. And also just the fact that I have no medical background, so I have absolutely no idea at this point what grade A esophagitis means. And actually, when you see this on paper, grade A esophagitis just sounds like quite scary. I had no idea what it was, but it just sounded like quite serious to me. But anyway, I came home and I typed it into Google because nobody had explained it to me. I hadn't had any explanation. So I typed into Google what grade A esophagitis was, and it just came up and said basically it's where I've had acid reflux and the acid has come up out of my stomach into my throat and burnt my esophagus.
Right.
And it's the scarring of the esophagus that's kind of made this tight feeling and that feeling of an obstruction there. So I got Google helped me there and told me like what that was. But then I'm there and I'm like, well, I know what it is now, but nobody's given me a directional, like, what do I have to do? Do I have to have more tests? Do I have to take medication? Like, what do I have to have an operation? Like, I had no idea what the next step was. So I rang the hospital and I'd said I'd come in for an endoscopy, and I haven't actually been explained any of my results. I don't know what's going to happen, what I've got to do. And they said, well, actually, that's because the medication that you're on now, the omeprazole, that is what we would put you on for grade A esophagitis. So I'm there and I'm like, well, I've been on this medication for weeks and weeks, and it's not helped me. And in fact, I'm just worse. I'm worse for taking the medication. And at this point, I wasn't sure whether it was the medication making me worse or just the fact that the timing scale is getting longer and longer, and it's just getting worse as time goes on. So they said, well, what we'll do then is they had a look at how much I was taking. So I was taking 2 in the morning at that point. They said, so what we'll do is we'll now double that dose. So now I'm taking double the double dose, double the original dose and double again. So now I'm taking 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. So again, like, I still, even after all this time, I think, well, they must know what they're on about because they're doing this all the time. So, and I'm already on the medication that supposedly heals it. I read all the leaflet in the box, and that sort of described, oh, it's used for acid reflux, how it works, and etc. etc. And I'm like, oh yeah, so I am on the right medication. That's the right thing to do. And I came home, so I started. Well, I was at home, sorry. Started taking the double dose, so 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And again, I don't know time scale from there, but I was doing this for a little while, and I just come to a realization that I'm just not going to get any better. Like, this is not going away. At this point, I fell into a deep depression because I obviously couldn't eat anything. So I'm getting very, very thin and very skinny. And everything in life kind of revolves around food. So I found that very difficult. And I didn't know at the time, but I actually I was a binge eater. So my previous to this in my life, I would be constantly thinking of food, what I'm going to eat next, what I'm going to have next. And I would eat chocolate or ice cream, anything sugar. I just loved sugar. And I would just binge on that. So, and I thought I was actually having quite a healthy diet because I would eat really well, or what I thought was well, all day and not have any sugar. And then I get to the evening and have probably my week's worth of sugar in the evening. But because I've only had the sugar from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, that's okay. So that's how I sort of reasoned it in my head. I haven't had sugar all day, so I deserve to have this much now this evening. But yeah, I didn't know it at the time, and I had no idea that I was a food addict, but I was, and I was a binge eater. And now I look back and I can see that I definitely had a binge eating disorder. Family sized bars of Cadbury's dairy milk, tubs of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. The 4 packs of donuts you get, well, not just one, I would eat the packet, all 4 of them in one go. It's just, I could just eat and eat sugar, and I would physically eat it until I felt sick as well. And I did that on pretty much most nights. And I would always finish off my binge with a hot chocolate with squirty cream and marshmallows. And it was terrible, really. I look back on it now, and sometimes I think about it and I say to my husband, I'm just like, I can't believe that we ate like that and we thought that was okay. How do we think that was okay? I don't know. But anyway, so at this point I lost a lot of weight because I couldn't eat, and I got myself into a severe suicidal depression because I just felt like I couldn't do anything. So, and I don't know if I was being invited out more or if it was just the fact that I couldn't go, but it felt like there were so many things I was missing. So friends were inviting me to barbecues, or, oh, you should come round for dinner, or we should go out for dinner. Go to parties and they've got you know what it's like, finger buffets, just food everywhere, birthday cake, everything was just food. And it was just so depressing because I'm like, I can't eat any of that. And bearing in mind at the time, I'm literally a food addict. So it's just the same as taking somebody off drugs. That's how it was. And it was depressing. I was so depressed. I would wake up in the morning and my first thought was, great, another day. I'll get through another day today. And that's how I woke up most mornings. And then I would probably cry for a bit in bed. I'd just have a little cry. And then I come down, sit on the sofa, wouldn't talk to anybody. How I kind of describe it is I was there, but I wasn't there. So it's very hard to describe if you haven't been there before. But yeah, that's how I kind of described it. I'm here, but I'm not here. And my thoughts and my mind were just completely gone elsewhere. And I just kind of existed. I just sat there. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't do anything. So everything in the house came to a stop. I didn't do any housework. I honestly, I was physically unable. I was severely depressed. I just couldn't even I didn't even have the capacity to even get up and think about coming to tidy the kitchen or coming to cook my children a meal. So I was having family members come in the morning because they knew that the kids weren't going to be ready for school. They weren't fed. They weren't going to have their breakfast. It was bad, really. When I look back on it.
Wow.
So yeah, so at this point I'm very, very bad. And my husband came in one day and he was just like, he would come in from work and I would just cry and cry and cry. And he was like, I really think you need to go to the doctors. They need to see how you are mentally because you're not well. And at the time, to be honest, I really didn't care. I was just like, I just didn't really want to go. I was just didn't really care. But anyway, he made me go, and I went, and I sat in the doctor's surgery, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I just said to him, I just said everything that I've just said to you. I just said, I feel like I can't do anything. I can't do anything socially. I'm being invited to barbecues. I can't go because I can't eat. I just explained everything. I'm just like, I'm getting skinny. I'm losing weight. He put me on the scales and had a look at my weight, and I'd actually lost like 2 stone from when I was previously weighed. I don't know when I was weighed. I have no idea previously, but from when I was last weighed, I'd lost 2 stone. So I was sitting at about 7.5 stone at that point. So I cried and just explained everything to him, how I'm feeling. And he turned around and he said to me, he was like, he just said, he kind of said it in like in a nice way, but he said, I'm not really sure why you're crying. He said, because the medication that you're on, the omeprazole, you should be able to eat exactly what you want to eat and be okay. And then that made me worse almost, because I'm thinking, well, obviously that medication works for other people, and there's a doctor sat there telling me that I should be able to eat anything that I want to eat with that medication and be fine. So I'm thinking, like, what's wrong with me? Why is this medication not working for me? And then he said to me, and he's like, I can quite clearly see that you're upset and you have some amount of anxiety. So he was like, I think we need to put you on some antidepressants. So from that doctor's appointment, I come out with antidepressants. Came home, started taking those, and I think I took them for about 2 or 3 days. It was very small amount of days that I took them for. And I suddenly had a realization, and I was taking them one morning here actually in the kitchen. And I thought, what am I doing? Like, I'm taking these 4 omeprazole, I'm taking these antidepressants, that none of them are doing anything. I know at the time I'd only taken 2 or 3 days of antidepressants. Yeah. I thought, none of this medication is working. Why am I even taking it? And from that point, I literally just picked up my medication and threw it in the bin. I was like, I'm not taking any more. I'm just refusing to take any more medication. And I think the other thing that did it for me is when I got those antidepressants home, I read the leaflet, and all of the side effects from antidepressants, I think I had a bit of anxiety that I was going to get side effects. So I just had like all this, I was just filled with anxiety, and it was just horrible. So I threw all the medication in the bin, and I thought, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing any medication. And I thought, I'm on my own here. If I don't sort it out myself, no one's coming to rescue me. I'm not going to, like, no one's helping me. Doctors, at this point, I was really failed by the doctors, and I was done with them. I was like, I'm not going back there. So I decided to research a nutritionist. She was local to me. So I got into contact with her, and I had an appointment with her. And I must say, she was the first person to sit me down and ask me questions about the whole history of my life. She wanted to know everything. So the appointment was 2 hours long, bearing in mind you only get 10 minutes with a doctor. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I think doctors as well, you feel pressured to quickly get it over and done with, because I just feel like, oh, I've only got 10 minutes, I must get it all like out and done in this 10 minutes. So it was really nice actually to go to her and her to sit me down. It was a lovely environment, and she sat me down, had a cup of tea, a cup of herbal tea, I don't know what it was, but something like that. She went through all my life as a baby, whether I'd been vaccinated, if I'd had any vaccinations throughout my childhood, teenage years, any antibiotics that I'd been on. She literally wanted to know everything. So this appointment took 2 hours alone, just going through my history, like my health history. So she did that, and I also had to provide a food diary, which at the time was pretty much Weetabix, because I couldn't eat anything. And Weetabix, I could get really mushy, and put loads of sugar on it because I love the sugar. So I just mash up a Weetabix in milk and just chuck spoonfuls of sugar and mix it all up, and that was quite nice and sloppy, if you like, to be able to get down my throat. So at that time, my food diary was pretty much Weetabix. So she looked at that and she was like, your food diary is not great. And she said, you probably want to cut down or cut out gluten and dairy. And obviously to me at the time, I'm like, well, that is my food. Like gluten is the Weetabix and the dairy is the milk. So I did come away and I did do that. And I actually came away and felt a lot better, like mentally, just in general, because I felt like I'd actually been listened to and somebody was taking me seriously. And that was the main thing. I just felt like somebody wanted to help me, whereas I hadn't had that my whole experience with the doctors. Not one moment did I think, oh, this person really wants to help me. So I came away from her like feeling really positive and like, yes, I'm glad I've done that. So I went away and put her diet into practice, cut out the gluten, cut out the milk. So, and she also said to cut out sugar, which I did. And she was a big advocate for lots of different fruits, lots of different vegetables. And she did tell me not to eat red meat, or red meat. Sorry, she told me not to eat red meat, but she told me that I could have chicken and salmon. So, and not pork either. I couldn't have pork at that time. But she did say to me, if I have the chicken, I've got to take the skin off, because with acid reflux, you've got to be really careful with high fat. And same with salmon. If I have the salmon, to cut the fat off, she's like, just avoid anything fatty. And yeah, she was a real advocate for lots and lots of vegetables, because she told me that I had a candida overgrowth in my gut, which she was absolutely right, with all the antibiotics that I'd had over the years. But she said like the fiber and the diversity of the fruit and vegetables is what feeds the microbes in the gut. So I came away thinking like, I've got to get this under control. I've got to get the bad bacteria out and I've got to get the good bacteria in. So from then on, my meals were pretty much, to be honest, they were exactly the same every single day, because I knew what I was having and it was just easy. So I knew I didn't have to think, well, what am I going to have today? So it was the same meal every day, but the only difference was it was either chicken or salmon. So I would just rotate the both. So it would be about 6 or 7 different vegetables. And all of those were, I hate to say it now, but they were like really green, you know, your kale, all the things that I just wouldn't eat now. And also grains. So I was having quinoa, like loads of that piled up, and I was putting turmeric on it, cumin, like all these things that are like superfoods that are supposedly like really good for inflammation. So I was just getting like turmeric and all these spices in wherever I could. So I'd mix that in with the quinoa. And then for the fats, I was just mixing my quinoa with olive oil, because I had to have something and I wasn't allowed animal fat. So I was just putting a bit of olive oil in my quinoa. 6 or 7 different vegetables, and then either a piece of chicken or a piece of salmon. And on this diet, I was starving. So when I say starving, though, I'm not exaggerating. I literally was starving. Not having the meat and not having the fats and just living pretty much off vegetables was not filling. So I'd eat the meal, and honestly, I could have eaten that 10 times over quite easily. So because of that, I started to add in porridge as snacks, because I was just constantly starving all day. And I would also snack on, again, I hate to say it, but nuts. So I was eating handfuls of almonds, walnuts, cashews, like anything to just so that I'm eating and trying to get myself full. I just couldn't get myself full, no matter what I did, even after porridge. So I'd be having porridge 3 times a day. I'd wake up, have porridge for breakfast, And I mixed it with, I did like overnight oats with kefir, like the fermented milk product, like for the probiotics for my gut bacteria. And then I'd have like some berries or something in that. Mix it all in. I had that for breakfast. Then lunchtime I would have my either salmon or chicken meal, and then I would have the same bowl of porridge afterwards as a dessert. And then for dinner later on in the evening, I would have the same thing, like either my chicken or my salmon meal, and then again porridge for dessert, and then in between all this, just snacking on nuts. And I still wasn't full, honestly. I was just constantly ravenous. I was so hungry. But also at the time of doing it as well, I was still reacting to food. So I forgot to mention actually during the when I had this lump in my throat, I started noticing at the time that I was also reacting to food. So any food that I would eat, I'd get like sores on my tongue, like ulcers or sores on my mouth. I'd get swollen glands in my neck, and I would just push, and that'd be so sore. I would get a swollen eyelids. I would get styes in my eyes. All these reactions from food. But as I went on this diet from my nutritionist, I noticed that these reactions were getting more and more. And I just found it so frustrating because and I was doing it for quite a while, because I'm thinking, and I never cheated once. I did not cheat once. I was strict as strict could be because I was getting myself better and I was going to do whatever I could to get myself better. So not once did I come off this diet, and I was on it for a long time. But I just noticed I was just getting a bit frustrated because I was eating all this healthy food and I was still having food reactions. I was still getting the swollen glands, and I would eat, and then like an hour later my whole eye is swollen, and I'm like, what of that plate have I just reacted to? And I'm like, it's all so healthy. And my thoughts were like, if I'm reacting to healthy food, if I'm going to react to a carrot, well then I might as well eat a bar of chocolate and react to that, because it was getting so annoying that I was eating so what I thought was healthy and still reacting to it. And I'm just like, I literally can't do it anymore. I'm eating so healthy and just reacting. So it just got really, really frustrating. Anyway, also whilst I was on this diet, because she pushed the whole fibre thing, telling me that I obviously needed to eat that to feed my gut bacteria. Off my own back, I bought a fibre supplement. So it's something called inulin, and it's an insoluble fibre, which apparently I did the research, and that's really good for feeding your gut bacteria. So I bought a whole pot of it, and I would just get a scoop of it, and every single bowl of porridge, any food I just sprinkle it all over my food. So like I'm having high fibre at this point. During that time of doing that, I never suffered with it before in my life, but I all of a sudden got really badly constipated and really struggling all the time.
You got constipated having fibre?
Yes. And like the high fibre definitely made me constipated. And this was never even an issue in the past. I'd never had like gut issues. I never suffered from constipation, diarrhea, anything like that. And the only thing was the acid reflux. So I'm thinking like, why have I now got constipation? Again, like I'm eating so healthy, I'm now so constipated. So I sort of put it down to, it could be a bit of a healing crisis, a bit of a, when my body's going into healing and these changes are happening. So I kind of told myself it could have been that. But I was just kind of like, I don't really understand like why I'm getting this now. And it wasn't until one day, what I thought was constipation was so bad. The pains in my stomach, and to this day, I've had 3 kids, and if you gave me the option now and said, would you rather have a baby or have appendicitis, I would say have a baby over that any day. So they took me to the hospital, and the doctor pushed, and she pushed, and she said straight away, she said, that's appendicitis. And I was convinced that it was constipation, because that's how it felt. But to this day, like the pain, like anybody that's had appendicitis will be able to relate, but the pain was absolutely horrendous. So yeah, that day I woke up with these just awful pains and thinking that it's like I've got really bad constipation. And my husband came in and he was like, "What's the matter with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I just think I've got really bad constipation." At this point, I'm like starting to throw up. I go up into my bed and I just curl around. Then like I'd be screaming out in pain. Then I think I got to go to the toilet, so I try and get out of bed, and I physically couldn't walk. It was that bad. I couldn't walk. At least like in labour, when you're having a baby, you can walk about. But I just fell to the floor. It was so painful. I can't describe the pain. So yeah, so they told me I had appendicitis and I had to go in for emergency operation to have my appendix removed. So that's what I did. Came out of hospital and carried on with my diet from the nutritionist. So again, at this point, I just hadn't come off at all, and I was just sticking to that. But my recovery took quite a long time. I think where I was poorly before the appendicitis, I think that I was quite weak anyway, so I think that didn't help my recovery. But I remember going onto Google and typing in like how long should you be feeling better after having your appendix out, and then there were people on there that were like, "Oh, I was back driving within a week. I was back to work within a week," and I'm like, "Oh my God, like this is me at like 4 weeks, like barely off the sofa, like still bloated and just not quite right." Anyway, as time went on, so it took me a long time to recover from the operation, basically. But as time went on, I felt a little bit better and felt like I could start doing things around the house again. So one day I was cooking a roast lamb for my husband and my children. Came out into the kitchen here and we're preparing all the vegetables. I had the lamb in the oven and I had to take the lamb out to baste it. I took the lamb out, and that's when my honestly, I honestly I don't know how this happened, but I don't know if I've got my mind like tricked into this, but I can't ever describe that. I can't ever describe it, so I always get really stumbly and stuck for words. But I don't know how to describe it. But that was my moment, if you like, of I just smelt this lamb, just the look of the lamb, like the crispy skin and the fat oozing out. And just every fibre of my being was just like, eat that lamb, you need to eat that lamb. So I then sort of had like a bit of an argument within myself, my head and my heart. So I've got my body like telling me, screaming at me, eat this lamb. And then my head's going, no, 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 you can't because it's fatty and you can't have fat because of the acid reflux and everything going on. So I was in this like constant battle, but honestly, I say it every time, but I get lost for words, but I just cannot describe. It was just a feeling that just came over me. It's an instinct. That's what it was, almost like just an instinct, and just something telling me you have to eat that. Something was telling me that. Honestly, I just can't. I can't describe it.
I get it. I'm a great believer in your body knows what's best for you and what you need. Because I had a situation when I was going through the carnivore stage for me where I'd lost a lot of weight. I suddenly had this craving. Every time I saw a chunk of butter, I'd eat the butter on its own, nothing with the butter. And it felt amazing. I can't, and like you, I can't describe that feeling I had of that butter in my mouth. It was almost like had fireworks going off inside me, you know?
Yeah. It's just so hard to describe. It's just the only way I can put it is just a really big force from within, just something telling me that's what you've got to eat. You have to eat that. So
So
obviously
did
like,
you?
I had this in my head. No, so I had this in my head. No, you can't eat it because it's fatty. You can't. Don't do that. But I did go onto my friend Google and I decided to type in is eating meat really that bad for you with acid reflux? So the first load of things that comes up with acid reflux is like don't eat red meat, don't eat chocolate, don't drink coffee. Like these tend to be the like top three things of acid reflux. Don't do any of those three things. So I'm like, oh damn, like I just can't have red meat. I scrolled down, and I don't even know if it's on the second page or at the bottom of the first page, but it was a long way down anyway. There was something come up. I don't even know what website it was or anything now, but it was something come up about the carnivore diet. I'd never heard of the carnivore diet up until this point. Didn't even know it was a thing. And I clicked on that and I started reading it, and I thought, like, a penny just dropped, and I was just like, every single thing I'm reading here just makes absolute sense. Like, they were saying about how, like, you know, going back to nature, like what we would have eaten, we wouldn't have been eating food that's made in a factory. And just the simplicity of it. And obviously at the time I was in a starved state. So to me, like, the thought of eating only meat was absolutely unreal. I was like, oh my God, if I could do this diet, that would just be the best thing ever. Because meat, obviously at that time for me, my body was just like, eat meat, like screaming at me. So I'm just thinking, I get to only eat meat. Like, that's amazing. Like, that would be the best thing ever. So I read all that, and I was like, that, it just clicked, and I was like, everything on there, I believe 100% everything on there, like, that all makes perfect sense. So I decided that I was going to go onto YouTube and do a bit more research on it, because once I think you get fixated on something, that's it, I'm off on it. And I fell into the rabbit hole and in all this research. Typed in the carnivore diet on YouTube, and up comes Kerry from Homestead Hell. You know Kerry. And it was his 30-day testimonial. And I watched his video, and Kerry will tell you himself, like, mine and his story are so similar. Like, we had so many things that were exactly the same. And he actually quite often says that he thinks I've been stalking him or something, and that I copied his story, because they're both so similar. So I saw his testimonial, and he had told me how he was off his acid reflux medication, he was off his antidepressants, he wasn't feeling depressed, he didn't have acid reflux, he didn't have all these things, he didn't have aches and pains, he didn't have all these problems. And you know how well, like, Kerry puts his stuff across as well. I that first video, I was sold. I was like, I'm doing that. I'm doing this. I'm starting it. So the next morning, I literally woke up without any preparation, and I didn't think about electrolytes or anything like that. I just went straight into it. I am an Aries, so I'm a bit impulsive and spontaneous. So that's not against my nature. I'm quite like that in life anyway. I get an idea in my head and it's happening there and then, that's it. So yeah, I woke up next morning, had lamb chops for breakfast, and that was the most delicious tasting meal that I've ever had in my life, because the first time that my body ate fat for a long time in a starved state, so just eating the meat and the fat was just amazing. And the thought that I get to do that again all day as much as I like was just beautiful. So yeah, so I started doing that, and I'm still on it now, and I can honestly say I will never ever come off of it, because I just, I say, I can't really put it in a time frame, but within the first week for sure, I just knew that I would be eating like that forever. I knew that I loved the diet, because my body was just wanting the meat so much, and it was so easy for me to do. Gradually, my anxiety and my depression started going away. My lump in my throat and my acid reflux were completely no more. And also at that point, obviously, I'm not on any medication. All my food reactions went away. I could eat meat and never react at all. So I wasn't getting any of my swollen glands, I wasn't getting my sides, my ulcers, my swollen eyelids, and all those symptoms. So yeah, so I did have a few transition symptoms, but I won't go into all of that now. But I did have
I can work it out.
yeah, I did have the keto flu, which I had to get through, and I did have some. I think I had all the symptoms, to be fair, that they list in the keto flu, and I had all the cravings that I had to fight through. I have got a video on my channel, actually, if anybody did want to see exactly what I went through, like transitioning wise. But yes, I got through all of that, and as I went on, just things got better and better. And then even things I didn't even realize the symptoms again that I'd had my whole life. Like, I didn't even know. I just thought having chronic ear infections and chronic UTIs verrucas on my feet, neuropathy, like tingling in my legs, Raynaud's syndrome in my hands. I just thought all these things were just what human beings got. Like I just thought it was a natural part of being a human that we get these things, and I just thought that was normal. And it wasn't until I was into the carnivore diet and I'm thinking, I haven't had a single urine infection. I haven't had a single ear infection. I haven't had a single reaction. Verrucas on my feet that I'd had for years and years since a child, just completely gone, like vanished. Neuropathy stopped. Raynaud's syndrome in my hands gone. Like I never got diagnosed with arthritis, but I'm pretty sure I had arthritis in my fingers, my wrists. And then all that pain went away and stopped.
And interestingly, I remember you've mentioned your tinnitus, because I never realised I had tinnitus until it went. I just assumed it was just a ringing noise, and it's only when you mentioned on Saturday at the Healing Humanity event, and you mentioned about the tinnitus bit, and I suddenly sat back and I thought, do you know what? I must have had tinnitus, but never. It was low level, whatever. But I don't have any of that at all. And it was interesting you said that yours went.
Yeah. So again, like you, I didn't actually realize that mine went away. I knew I had tinnitus. I knew I had that. And I'd actually paid privately to go to ENT previously to have it looked at. And they said there's nothing they can do with tinnitus. It's just something that you've got to live with. And I also had the pulsatile version as well. So I not only had the ringing, but I'd also have the I'd lie down at night and I would just get a heartbeat in my ear, and it was just so annoying. But anyway, it wasn't until like a few weeks into carnivore, and I was watching some YouTube video, and in the comments somebody had listed everything that they'd healed, and they on one of those bullet points they put tinnitus, and I was sat there and I was like, I didn't even think of that, but I'm like, hang on a minute. My tinnitus is gone. It's gone. Like, I haven't got the ringing anymore, and I don't go to bed at night and have this pulsing in my ears. So all of these things like just started to clear up one by one. Another big one actually, which I forget to mention quite a lot, and I didn't mention on Saturday either, is during the time that I was eating this diet from my nutritionist, I started losing my hair. To the point where I was actually quite embarrassed by it because I couldn't wear it down because you'd see like short bits or bits where it just fallen out. And I'd be in the shower and I could just do that, and like clumps of hair was just coming away. And I told my nutrition this at the time, and I said, because I sort of convinced myself, oh, maybe it's a detox symptom, like I'm detoxing, so maybe my like body's like getting rid of my hair or some like damaged hair, I don't know. And I mentioned it to her at the time. She said, oh, not really sure what that is. She didn't really have an answer for that. And it wasn't until like I went carnivore and my hair just grew back to like what it was, and if not better. So it's just like thick and lush and just so strong. And yeah, I just don't have the like what I had when I was eating that diet. I was just a little, yeah, I couldn't wear it down, so it was a bit. I felt really self-conscious about it because it was, you could see all where it was sort of thinning and falling out. But now I look back on it and I think, well, that was never good, was it? That my hair was falling out. And then how like healthy my hair and that is now, it just proves something. So yeah, as weeks went on, I just got better and better. Depression completely vanished and went away. Another important thing, again, which I forget to mention, most people go on carnivore for the weight loss, but bearing in mind, I started severely underweight. So I'm 7.5 stone at this point when I start. And a few weeks in, and I'm gaining weight rapidly. And I'm like, wow, like this is amazing. Like, I'm gaining weight. And I just kept gaining weight until I got to a point where I just stopped. And for me personally, I think, well, I stopped at about 9.5 stone, which is what I am now. But for me, I believe that carnivore keeps my body at the weight that I'm supposed to be. So I think 9.5 stone for me is a good weight. I think I sit well at 9.5 stone. I wouldn't want to be any more, and I could go a little bit less if I wanted, but I don't need to go any like too much more or less. But I truly believe that like carnivore just naturally keeps me where my body wants me and where I should naturally sit. So I gained weight up until 9.5 stone, and I just stopped there. I don't gain any more weight up. I don't put on any more. No matter how much fat I eat, I'll just stay at about 9.5 stone. And I don't lose it, obviously. And I going from 7.5 stone, that's a 2 stone addition,
Yep.
which is great. So it got me back to my body weight, and it got me healthy again. Yeah, and I wouldn't look back now.
So obviously you have a young family and your husband. So
Mm-hmm.
is the family all carnivore, or do you have a hybrid version or a blend? How do you address the different dietary needs of the family?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I was obviously so psyched about the carnivore diet. I was like, we're all going carnivore. That's what we're doing. I want my kids to be carnivore, because I knew it was just the optimal diet for us humans. From what it did to me, I'm like, this is what we're supposed to be eating. So I did actually put my kids on carnivore, but I quickly learned. I don't know the time scale, but 2 or 3 weeks maybe. That wasn't sustainable for them. We went to a party during that time, and I was at the party, and the party food came out, and they obviously had the party rings, the chocolate fingers, the Jaffa cakes. Like, there's nothing good in that party buffet. It's all crap. It's all junk food. And then my kids go to this party table, and they are like, give me all that food. And honestly, it's like they've never seen it before. And I'm thinking, like, that's because they're not having it at all at home, that they're thinking I
Get
might
it in
not get
now.
it together for a while, so I'm going to have to eat it all now. And I thought, oh, this is actually could be a problem, because I don't want them to not be with me and go to parties and things and think, oh, I've got to get as much as I possibly can. And then also that could actually cause a binge eating tendency. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Feast and
ironic that
famine, isn't it?
that could
Becomes feast and
start
famine.
that. Yeah, because it's like anything as a parent. If you're too strict on anything, they tend to rebel and go the other way. So you have to like get the fine line of, like when I was a teenager, like my mum would occasionally let me have at Christmas, like have like an alcohol pop. It might have been like a Bacardi Breezer or a WKD, but because I had that, I felt like I was cool and I was allowed it, and it prevented me from going out on the streets and drinking in the bus shelter like what a lot of my friends did, because their parents were like, no, you can't have anything. So I think it's very much like that in parenting anyway. You have to get the balance so that they don't go the other way and completely rebel. And I could just see at that party, I was like, I can't be so strict, because I can't let this happen. I can't let them start binging. And I don't want them to think, oh God, I don't know where like the next chocolate finger is going to come from, so I must eat them all now. And then I also didn't want them, not that they had at that point, but I could just sort of see how then that they might be away from me and then start lying about what they've had, and
Yeah.
just get like that. So I then switched them to a whole foods diet, so that's much easier. So they have no gluten. That's one thing. They don't have gluten. And they also don't have vegetables. Actually, I don't let them eat vegetables, which they think is great. They love that. But they do have. So their mains are always based around meat, like meat first. So it's always meat. And then they do have potatoes, and they'll have rice. And they will also have fruit. So a whole foods diet. So everything that they have during the week is grown, and it is one ingredient food. So that's how they live during the week. But on the weekend, I do allow them. I hate to call it their treat tin, but they each have a treat tin, with chocolate bars or whatever in. And then on the weekend, they know that they're allowed something out of their treat tin. But again, I've got the fine balance now, because they're having it, so they know on the weekend, oh, it's the weekend, we can have our chocolate bar or whatever out of our tin. We can choose what we want out of our tin. But they're also not having an abundance of it, so it's not like, oh, it's the weekend, have as much as you want. It's still limited, but they're so happy with that, and And they've done so well on that. And they even now, especially my eldest Jack, he is completely aware of what it does to his body. So we'll go away on holiday, let's say, for example, and it's quite hard to eat well when you're away and not in familiar surroundings. So they'd eat probably like a lot more junk than what they would eat at home, because obviously their bodies aren't usually used to it. And they definitely at home do not have seed oils. Everything like potatoes, homemade chips, anything like that is all cooked in animal fat. So they have absolutely zero seed oils. And then they go on holiday and they start consuming seed oils and are having like lots of sugar, like a completely different diet. And the last holiday we went on, my little boy William, he's 5, and he said, "Oh, mummy, so I've got ulcers all over my tongue." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's because of all the food you've been eating, like whilst you've been away." And then Jack's the same, my eldest. He'll notice that he'll eat something and then his skin gets bad, because he's that age now. He's like 11. He's at secondary school, and he'll notice his skin gets bad, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not having any more of that because it makes my skin bad." Or he'll eat it and he'll go, "Oh, I've got a bad tummy from eating that." And they can make the connection now. They can make the connection from what I eaten and how I feel, which is absolutely fantastic, I think.
That's the best education you can give them.
Yeah, and that's it. And they are learning, and they know what it's all about, and they know what it does to them. And like you said, I think I can only be an example and I can only teach them, which I feel like I actually have taught them. And God forbid, should they run into any problems later on in life, they don't have to go through what I went through. They will know I've just got to go carnivore. They'll know.
Yeah, because the other thing you've got to take into account, the difference between them and an adult, they're growing. So their body is using what it's eating to create the calciums and all the bits and pieces for them to grow. So when they do eat a bit of crap, their body is going to absorb a chunk of it and reprocess it into growth. Where us as adults stop growing, so we start storing rather than using it. So there's a fundamental difference that I believe, anyhow, the difference
Yeah.
between children, what they eat, as opposed to adults do. But that's pretty. So how do you find them? The biggest issue that, well, not issue I have, but the biggest thing I come across most now is people are so judgmental. They see that I've lost 7 stone. I'm fit as a fiddle and all the various bits and pieces. And people still say, "Oh, I'm worried about you having a heart attack. I'm worried about you having this. I'm worried about." And I'm like, look at me and look at me a year ago. I was not healthy a year ago. Why are you even querying it? Do you find similar, or do you not have that issue?
So I did when I first started. Like my mum was like, "You can't, I think that is that generation as well. Like you can't just eat meat. That's not good for you. What about your vegetables? Like you must eat your vegetables. Like broccoli is so good for you. It's full with antioxidants." I had all this. And I did find it frustrating in the beginning, because like you, I was like, "Look at me." I was like, "Look how bad I was before. I'm so thin." And yeah, at the time she was like, "Oh, you're so thin. You need to do something." And then I got like up to like being healthy and a healthy weight, not depressed, like just so much better, like a completely new me, like the best version of myself I've ever been. And I found that frustrating that they couldn't quite see that. It's like, why can't you connect the two? Like I'm like this and feeling this good because I'm eating only meat. So in the beginning, she found it very hard to grasp, but as I've gone along, I'm nearly 2 years. I'll be 2 years carnivore in May, and she actually now, like, because every time I see her, we obviously have like these little discussions, or I'll drop little bits in here and there. And I now genuinely believe that she believes in carnivore, and she's even had lots of, because she's got issues herself. She's got fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, lots of things going on. And I've said to her over and over, she has this acid reflux, the same as me, the lump feeding and all that. And I said to her, "Mum, if you went carnivore, you could heal all of these issues." And every time she asked me like another question. So you can tell she's like curious. So I do genuinely think she believes in it now, and which is really nice, and she's accepted how I eat now. So like even if I go to stay with her, bless her, she's like filled the fridge with. She's like, "Oh, I've got you some steak. I've got you." And I'm like, "Oh, that's like." She's accepted that now, and I think she can
Brilliant.
see that that's what I do and that's what I'm gonna do. Um, but she won't quite go carnivore because she says to me, like, she's not a meat lover and she works shifts quite a lot, and she just says I can't. She said I can't quite see how that I'm going to like be able to cook meat and take it to work. She's like, I don't want to eat cold meat. So you can tell she's sort of had these thoughts. She's thought about it, but for her, I don't physically think she's ready to take the leap at the moment. But yeah, I
Right.
definitely did that in the beginning. But I think as time's gone on, people have actually realised, oh, this is not a fad. Like, I'm not doing it. Um, I'm not. It's not a fad diet. I'm not doing it for fun. Like, I'm on it now, and that's what I'm going to do. So people have just kind of accepted that that's what I do.
No, excellent. So yeah, it was interesting hearing Lee's story, Lee Copus, the Kent carnivore, and the way that the more fibre he ate, the more damage he did to his intestines and all that. And now, unfortunately, has the bag scenario, and you wish he'd have known then. And we're all been brought up in this low fat and big veg 5 a day and all this side of it. It's a shame that we have to get ill to discover the right way of living, and I think that's tragic, really. And that's what I hope for channels like ours, that we get the message out so that people can improve things quicker. And it was
Yeah.
interesting in your earlier part that every time you had a problem, the solution by the doctor, and I'm not knocking doctors because they have a really tough job to do, but from what I understand, on their 4 year training, they have half a day on nutrition.
Mm.
But
This
so
is the
their
thing.
solution
We can't
is to
we
give you a
can't blame
tablet.
it. Yeah.
No, I,
We
I I don't blame them at all. I think
yeah,
they have a very difficult job, but I think
yeah.
some of them are starting to wake up to it now,
Mm.
because it's just giving you another tablet and then giving you another. So rather than dishing a drug out, get to the root cause, which the nutritionist lady you spoke to did get down to the root cause, even though her belief structure is probably obviously not carnivore, but it was whole foods she was trying to get you
Mm.
to do, which
Yeah.
is better than processed food, because that's the
Mm.
worst thing of them all, isn't it? So
Yeah. And
it's
that's
just
why
really
I felt,
interesting hearing your story.
yeah. And that's why with the nutritionist I felt better initially, because I cut out all the processed food and all the junk food, but still
Yeah.
having the reactions was to the vegetables and the plants. That was what I was reacting to whilst I was on her healthy diet. Um, so yeah, but no, I think in the beginning I was kind of, with the doctors, I was kind of like, oh, they've let me down. But when you think about it, you can't blame the doctors, because that's just what they've been taught. That's just exactly what they've been taught to do,
Yeah.
and they don't know. It's just ignorance. They don't know. If they knew what the answer was and they were kind of like hiding it, um, then that's different. But I think, like, my doctors, especially anyway, just genuinely were just completely ignorant to it and had no idea.
But
And
but
they
you
genuinely
summed
think that they're doing the best for you,
yeah.
but
But
because that's what they've been told.
you summed it up brilliantly earlier. You get a 10-minute slot. They are literally, it's conveyor belt for them, and they need to get the treatments out. They
Yeah.
can't spend the time that they need, unfortunately. And the irony is, think of the money the NHS would save if more people went carnivore, wouldn't necessarily need the medication. So the people that did need the treatment would have more time to get to the bottom of the issues. But we can only hope that someone like JFK over in the States starts the ball rolling, because the UK health seems to follow what America does. So with a bit of luck, he can raise
Yeah.
that issue. I'm just concerned that his name's Kennedy, and unfortunately, that name normally upsets big business, ends up in a wooden box. So let's hope that that's not the case on this occasion. So that's
Hopefully.
absolutely
Um,
brilliant, Lauren. You're an absolute star. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
no, I don't think so.
So, one quick question then, especially because you're in the West Country. How do you get on with alcohol?
Never drank it anyway. So I used to drink it as a teenager to get drunk,
Yeah,
but never liked alcohol. So I've never been one to sit and have a drink in the evening. Never. I just never liked the taste of it. So giving up alcohol for me, not a problem, because I didn't really drink it anyway. It was the sugar for
okay.
me. That was my thing.
So you're a proper should addict.
Oh yeah. So like my thing, like some people have the thing, don't they, that they look forward to like a glass of wine in the evening. Mine was
Yeah.
always, oh, I'm looking forward to the dairy milk in the evening. That was my thing. Yeah.
Right.
No
Okay. So
alcohol. Easy.
so do you have any chocolates or anything now? Do you do like black dark chocolate? Because that's apparently not as bad. Do you nothing at all? You're completely no.
No, I don't do any dark chocolate. The only time I have had a couple of times when I've come off of carnivore.
Lauren, you're an absolute star. Thank you very much. It's been a brilliant story. I will put a link to your YouTube channel. Is to say if there's anything else you want to do, but if not, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and hope
Thank
you
you,
have a very prosperous New Year.
and you. Thank you.